Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. My name's Karina Wong, and I'm the head of communications at Kaplan. We are a global education company, which is where I have the privilege of working with today's keynote speaker. As you've heard, Dr. Andrew Temte is the president and global head of corporate learning at Kaplan. It's a role that combines his multiple backgrounds as a finance professor, as an educator, and as a business leader. So Andy, I know you're happy to be here. And I know you're eager to discuss the topic at hand, which is the post-COVID workplace. It's a subject I know you have a lot of strong views on. So let's dive in.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. It's going to be a great conversation.
Sure. First of all, let's start at the 10,000 foot level, which is taking a look at this from a philosophical lens. How important is it for business leaders to have a guiding philosophy in thinking about opening up during the pandemic?
Well, you have two main constituents in your business. You have your customer and you have your employee. Both of those groups are looking to you as a leader to set the tone for what your business will stand for as we hopefully slowly and methodically restart our economy. Both groups are looking for a North Star that you are following. And during our conversation, I'm sure we'll touch on the point in numerous ways about how you as the leader you're setting the tone, you're setting the agenda. It's just like any other cultural conversation that you might have in your organization. Culture comes from the top. The new normal the new normal that we're all navigating towards is in some regards a cultural conversation. How do we build a new culture in our organization? How do we help our customers understand the new way of working and the new ways that we're going to approach serving them? So having that philosophical North Star established, spending time with your leadership team, making sure that you have multiple perspectives that you're bringing on board, being both inclusive and then ultimately directive as the leader about where the business is headed is going to be key. I'll just say this, that we all pre-COVID we all had a management style. Whether we recognized it or not, we were setting the tone for our organization. We did have a management style. And I would just, ask what is it about my management style that may need to change to navigate through this COVID environment?
Now, I know, as important as having a guiding philosophy is, being a leader during this time obviously requires a lot more. It's, this pandemic is really putting leadership to the test in so many ways. What would you say are the key qualities you would like to see our business leaders demonstrating during this time?
Yeah, that is really the question of the day, because this audience that we're talking to today is populated primarily by leaders, but also individual contributors. I would say that putting your people first will pay dividends in the long run, because remember, your most valuable asset as a business is the people that have chosen to work with you and for you pre-COVID, and they're staying with you and working for you because of the choices that you're making and the leadership stance that you're taking. So I know that there are many short-term decisions that everybody has to be making in the moment right now. But taking that longer term view centered around your people, I think is just absolutely essential. And right alongside of that are the qualities, the leadership qualities of being agile and also being creative. this environment, what I call the COVID transition. We are not post-COVID. We're certainly not pre-COVID. We're all navigating through this COVID transition. Requires us to be agile and creative, because the environment that we're operating in can change really on a moment's notice based on government direction and where the numbers are all moving. So, putting ego aside, putting preconceived notions about how things should work aside, and really opening one's mind, taking on board information from a number of different directions is going to be absolutely essential. I would also say that resilience and courage is important, because you will, in your travels as a leader, you will see other people doing things certainly differently than you are. You'll see things done in a way that maybe you don't agree with. Maybe you went to a restaurant, or you walked into a business and nobody was wearing a mask, or it didn't seem like anybody cared. And it may be very alluring to be drawn into that kind of world, and take a left turn and maybe reduce some of the protections that you've put into place, because it's going to have more short-term economic benefit for you. But to have that courage to do the right thing, and both externally, but also to just knock down the politics in your organization, knock down any protectionism that's happening inside your company, because that hashtag stronger together, or in this together, that hashtag really matters.
I think you're right. That's a great agility, resilience, courage. Those are all things I think we all look up to our leaders for. Personally, how have you addressed this? Are there ways or examples in your own, you brought up the example of mask wearing. Are there other ways in which you as a leader have found these put to the test?
Well, you are head of communications for all of Kaplan in North America. And I'm just going to make a pitch for communication. One of the ways that I've done it is through writing. I find a great deal of comfort in writing, and I am an educator by background, and so it's very natural for me to talk to various audiences like this, and to be a communicator. That's the other muscle, and you and I talked about this before the session today, that really exercising those communication muscles, both to the outside audiences and internal to your organization. There just really isn't such a thing as over communicating in this environment. And if you feel like you haven't said something for a while to your population, your team, your group, then it is really time to start writing, put together a video blog, do whatever, multiple channels, multiple ways to get your message across. That I think is just absolutely essential.
You and I are completely on the same page on that. As you know,
a bit of an echo chamber here on that. So.
Exactly. So I know, hand in hand with communications, you've talked about the role of organizational trust in creating a healthy work environment. I think that is as key as communications. And now that we're seeing a majority of the workforce still working from home, how does that dynamic play into a post-COVID world? Does this become more important?
Yeah, it's and I'm going to overuse this phrase throughout this, is absolutely essential. And you asked in your previous question, you kind of asked about what I'm seeing as I'm out traveling. And one of the things that's really disturbing to me is business leaders who are bringing people back into an office environment that don't need to. They're doing so more because they don't trust their people, and they maybe don't have the systems and the processes in place to measure and monitor productivity. You know, it is a balancing act between ensuring that your people are doing the jobs that you're paying them to do, but also trusting that your people are grown-ups and they're going to do the job that that you expect them to do. So I've seen a number of businesses bring teams back into an office environment where they're maybe not social distancing the way that they should, or they just really don't need to be back in an office, and they're bringing them back because they want to keep tabs on their people. They feel like they would be more productive if they're all together in a group. But the key question that I would have leaders ask themselves is, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we bringing our people back into an office environment? Personally, as a leader, I made the decision early on to avoid bringing our people back into an office environment for as long as we possibly can, because I feel I have a civic and you know, a global responsibility to keep as many people out of the human blender as possible for as long as possible, so that truly essential workers that are absolutely essential for our economy to get back on track and get moving again, that those people are in the workforce, and I'm not unnecessarily bringing people back into a physical environment where the aerosols that are coming out of our mouths and going into our HVAC systems can unnecessarily get people sick. So use your 5 whys from your lean and continuous improvement training to ask yourself, why am I bringing these populations back?
Have you had any resistance from people? Like, what happens, you know, building organizational trust? And I think that's a good example of how you've set the tone. But there are a lot of people, obviously, who miss the work environment and miss their colleagues and want to come back and want to engage and say, oh, this isn't so bad. How do you navigate that?
So I've seen a lot of businesses doing Monday morning coffee half hours, other quote unquote social get-togethers. I've seen a number of happy hours, kind of after work happy hours, where sales teams and other teams that are used to being together are spending time over Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever the technology is. And those are effective. One of the things that I recommend to leaders is to create an environment of clarity, as much clarity as is possible. So, for example, at Kaplan, we have said that we are not going to be coming back into an office anytime before the end of 2020. So we've provided that clarity, and we're also providing employee engagement facilities like the Hangouts, like the coffee hours within our teams to allow for that social interaction. When you're doing a meeting, like you're bringing a team together over Zoom for a business meeting, carve out 5 minutes at the beginning to ask about how the weekend went, or how families are doing, or just to have that conversation between the team, and then make sure that you end the meeting early, so the business happens very crisply. End the meeting early so that people can get up, walk around, take a little bit of a mental break before they roll into their next session. The purpose of providing that clarity about when you're going to be back into an office environment is so that you can provide some level of comfort for those individuals who are desperately craving that social interaction that comes from the work environment, and be listening to your employee population about how you're going to engineer that work environment when they do come back, so that the people that can work from home on a permanent basis, that you trust them and you allow them to do so. And then the folks that really need to be back in the office, either for mental health reasons or because of the handoffs that occur between employees, that you're carving out, making that space available once it is safe and responsible to bring those teams back in the work environment.
So I think that, that works certainly for companies like ours that are large and have the luxury of having employees work from home. I'm assuming there are a number of folks here who probably run smaller businesses, and it may not be quite that easy. And I'm wondering, what do you think, what do you say to, and maybe this is, I know this is another passion of yours, getting down to sort of the tactical level. What can business leaders be doing right now to help, sort of their employees, help their customers feel safe? If you're not if you just as a business leader, what do you think they can be doing?
I'll talk specifically about technology and the workspace environment generally. And this goes back to my previous comments about being agile, creative, resilient, and courageous. What most of your people, both your customers and your employees, don't want to see is a return to exactly the way things were before they left the office environment. In other words, make an effort here. The world is going to be different. The world is going to have a new normal, some post-COVID normal that we don't necessarily know exactly how that's going to play out, but you as a leader are going to influence that. So while your employees were working from home or away, if you didn't do anything around the office to reconfigure the seating chart, create more space, create purposeful work flow patterns in that office environment, you're really missing the mark. From a consumer perspective, the people that are buying things from you, simple things like technology that you can deploy in a very short period of time that drives more of a contactless environment for your consumers. Those are very strong signals that you can be sending that you care, that you want to make a difference. And I'll tell you a really short story. I walked into a business that at least on the surface, on the window dressing, had said that they were doing all the right things. There was a sign on the door to social distance, etc. But walked in, nobody behind the counter was wearing a mask, so that was signal number one that nothing had really changed and that the business really didn't care. And then, oddly enough, when I was checking out, the credit card terminal, which credit card terminals are easily changeable today to tap, contactless, don't make me press the button on the screen. Everything was contactless in this business, except the business made me touch the screen to decide whether I wanted to give a tip to their people. And I was just like, wow, they put in all this effort, but the effort really didn't, as a consumer, it didn't meet the mark for me because A, the behavior of the people really didn't change, and the simple little things that could have been done while everybody was on lockdown really didn't get done.
One thing that touches on is your, something I know you've talked about a lot, and I like the term personal bubble. You've talked about that. Everybody has their own personal bubble. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means, and what that means both in society, as a business leader, and businesses thinking ahead? And you've already touched on it a little bit, but I like the notion of a personal bubble, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, so the personal bubble is exactly what it describes. You all know people who have a big personal bubble. They're not huggers. They don't. They're like very standoffish, and that was pre-COVID. So now think about those people that you remember from pre-COVID that had a personal bubble, were a bit more standoffish, really didn't want to shake hands, certainly weren't huggers. And now imagine the growth and the expansion of everyone's personal bubble. Even if somebody was a close talker before, they're likely to be a bit more standoffish, certainly during the COVID transition and even after. And the thing that I'll say about the personal bubble is that it conflicts significantly with the partisan culture that we've created over the last, especially the last 30 or 40 years. Everything is in our society seems to be either right or wrong. We're on one side of something or the other. Groups get lumped into these big batches, and stereotypes are easily created. Even COVID-19 has unfortunately been politicized and I'll put in a special plug, folks. The coronavirus does not care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. It just doesn't, politics doesn't matter in this conversation. So we need to think about how our society seems to want to be very binary, either sit on one side of an issue or another. But the whole concept of the personal bubble, and you as a leader thinking about consumer behavior during the transition and in post-COVID, I want you to be thinking about how it's not a this or that kind of an equation. Everybody is going to develop their own personal sense of what safety means to them, both during the transition and after the transition. Being very cold and calculating, and I don't want anybody to misconstrue this, but in the back of everybody's mind is going to be this calculation of the risk that they're willing to take. And that risk centers around, am I going to get sick? What's the probability that I'm going to get seriously ill or even potentially die from this human interaction? Pre-COVID, we all wandered around with a death rate from the seasonal flu that was about 0.1% of all reported cases, and that was the normal that we lived with. Post-COVID, there's going to be a different equation. Even if there is a wonderful vaccine, there's just going to be a different environment. And the whole concept of the personal bubble is to ask you as a leader to not lump everybody into one category or another, but to recognize the nuance that your customers and your consumers have when they walk through your door or when they interact with your business.
So how do you do that? How does that factor into, as we're talking to a lot of business leaders here, recognizing there are customers who have individual ranges of personal bubble? How do you as a business leader think about how that plays out?
My personal opinion is that we must err on the side of social responsibility versus personal freedom. because the although the personal bubbles are all nuanced and everybody's got a somewhat of a different view, the facts of the matter are that as a society, to move forward, to get our economies moving in a responsible, purposeful fashion again, we do have to work together. And erring on that side of social responsibility and sending those signals that stem all the way back from the first question that you asked me, which was about the philosophy that you have as a business, is going to be essential. And I'll just throw out, there's a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion today for many different reasons in our economy. And if you take an inclusive stance as a business leader that contemplates this nuance and this range of behaviors by your clients, and you relate that back to your philosophy, that I believe is going to stand you in good stead as you build all of your business processes and codify those processes as we go through the transition and into the new normal that comes out the other side.
So I think I like that the notion of inclusion feeds right into another, I know another topic that you've written about and spoken about quite a bit, and sort of a consistent theme in your writing is the notion of balance and the balancing different views, balancing different perspectives, balancing different needs. What are the things that business leaders need to balance as they think about reopening businesses? You've talked about some of it here, but I know there are so many other things that you can touch on.
Yeah. So to me, the concept of balance is really important here, and it's you can also think about being purposeful. You can think about that agility and the creativity that we talked about previously. One thing that I will ask this audience to think about is coming back to their own management philosophy and the balance that you're creating in that management philosophy across the vectors like vulnerability versus strength. Where do you fall on that spectrum between being vulnerable with your employees and with your audiences, and being a strong, determined leader? Another one is the balance between being personally confident and selfless across the audiences that you're dealing with. Being very passionate about what you're doing, but also being measured, being directive versus inclusive, as we've talked about. Being purposeful versus being curious. So there are many management philosophies that are out there. There are more books than will fill the Library of Congress on management philosophy. But just think carefully about where you sit along some of those spectrums. The other thing that I really think strongly about in terms of balance is being purposeful in your own interactions with society. So when COVID-19 first hit, we were in lockdown mode. Our personal network shrunk from a big circle that we were interacting with a lot of human beings down to essentially our family unit. And the concept of balance, to me, from an economic perspective and reopening our economies, is to wake up every day and think very carefully and purposefully about how we're going to interact with other humans today, and how I slowly but purposefully expand my circle back toward something that looked like the big circle I had before, but is slowly expanding and letting folks and allowing folks into your circle. We just cannot jump right back into where we were before. The economy is not going to come back like a rocket ship or any other kind of V. And the way back, in my opinion, is very purposeful and methodical reopening of our economies, and this balancing act, both as a leader, where do I sit on the spectrum, and how do I purposefully expand my network so that we can get our economy back going and simultaneously protect those we love and protect those around us.
I think that's so on point. And so, for this particular audience in particular, thinking about all the things that they need to balance, it's a heavy lift. I know, and we're coming towards the end of our conversation. I know we have so many types of business leaders here today, people who are running small businesses, people who are leaders at national, global organizations. But as business leaders and contributing individuals, members of the community, everyone here, I think you feel has a responsibility and a role to play in how we move forward in this economy. I know you've largely covered so much of it here in this discussion, but just sort of in a crystallizing it, what is your view on what the role of, now that we have all these business leaders here, what is your view on what that role is?
I'm a history buff. I wanted to be a history major when I first went to college, and I quickly found out that history professors don't make a lot of money, and providing for my family was going to be more difficult. So kudos to anybody who's a history professor. That is really, really awesome, very noble work. Anyway, I'm a big fan of European history, and my favorite podcast is the British History Podcast, so look it up if you haven't heard about it. But that podcast takes us all the way back to when Caesar went to the British Isles in 54 BC, and then I think in the current state in that podcast, it's up to like 1030 or something like that. So it's a very slow burn on British history. Anyway, I'm going to get to the point in just a moment, which is that in Anglo-Saxon times and Roman times, etc., there's the concept of the shield wall. So when two armies battled one another, everybody had a sword or a pike and a shield. The shield's in the left hand, the sword is in the right hand. And they literally locked their shields together. And the purpose of the shield is not necessarily to protect you. The purpose of the shield is to protect the guy that was to your left, because their right flank is wide open and exposed. And it was your job to both be fighting with your right hand and protecting the guy to the left with your shield. And that shield wall would lock together and be nearly impenetrable. The Romans did it. The Anglo-Saxons did it, and on and on and on through history. So I in one of my posts about a month or so ago, I had a gentleman from I can't recall his name, but he jumped in with this idea of a shield wall, and I've just grabbed right onto it mentally in terms of how I'm thinking about what we can be doing as a society: mask up, distance, purposefully restart our economic engines, buy local when we can, support our local businesses when we can, get out there in a very purposeful, methodical fashion, but always have in your mind this concept of the shield wall, that I've got that mask on because yes, I want to protect myself, but I'm wearing that mask because I care about you. I care about the guy or the gal who's on my left, who's fighting with me, who's standing with me to send coronavirus into the annals of history and to get to the other side and to the new normal that we're all going to create for ourselves, which I believe can be a very positive and a beneficial future for all of us. But going back to the past and doing everything the way that we always did it pre-COVID, it's just not, that's not how we should be behaving. We should be thinking about new ways of doing business, new ways of serving our customers, new ways of developing our people, new ways of being educators. And the way that we get there is by having our shields locked, our masks on, our distancing, supporting contact tracing, supporting efficient, highly efficient testing around the country, and really coming together. So I'm not running for any office. It's not what I'm trying to do here. I care about you. I care about our community. I care about our nation, and I care about our global economy, because we're all on this little blue dot together.
Thanks, Andy. I think that's a great note to end on. Always great to chat with you. I hope everyone here enjoyed the discussion, and please feel free to follow Andy on LinkedIn. He's a prolific poster if you are interested in his thoughts and ideas. And thanks to the Better Business Summit for hosting. And thanks to everyone for being here, and enjoy the rest of the summit.